Welcome to a very fun talk. Very, very fun. Navigating religious trauma. Yeah. Honestly, thank you so much for everyone to being here. It's been an incredible time at the festival, and honestly, this is the panel that I've been the most nervous about, which tells me that it's the panel that I care the most about. And also on such an illustriously respected this incredible juggernauts that I'm sitting with, and it's so beautiful.
We didn't
and
pay
I feel
her.
very honored. No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. So, hi, my name is Maneo Mohale. I am a poet and a troublemaker and a wordsmith and a witch and a boy and a girl at the same time. My pronouns are they and them. And I am very excited just to be on a panel, but I, as a person who is both queer and also very much believes in the principle of self-identification, sometimes bios can get a bit messy and strange and feel a bit mechanical. I thought I would give you the opportunity of introducing yourselves and standing in your own truth, and also asking a little bit of how you would define faith for you now, your relationship with faith at the moment. And since this is about navigating religious trauma, if your journey from wherever, because we have many diverging journeys on the panel today, if your journey was a road, where would it lead to? So I'm asking you your name, your introduction, and if your journey was a road, where would it be leading to?
Those are already tough questions, Maneo. But
it's the easiest ones of the night.
I'm scared.
Take breaths now.
Okay, I'm kidding. My name is Pontsho Pilane. My full name is Pontsho Tsamodimo Lebadimo, which means visions of God and of the gods and my ancestors. And I am a word wrangler, like I like to call myself. I beat words into submission for a living. Yes, I'm a recovering journalist. I'm a researcher. But one of the roles that I'm embracing more and more is my academic role. I'm busy with my PhD into the decolonial histories of obesity science and how they impact Black women. Yeah. And where has the road of my faith or recovering from my faith led me? It's led me to the ocean. And by that, I mean I'm more spiritually fluid than I've ever been in my life. And it's the most freeing I've ever been in my life. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Thobeka Yose. I am a mother. That's a very important part of me. I'm a mother to Loetu. I am also a writer, editor, and a rebel, curious person, a troublemaker, but in a very subtle way. You wouldn't think when you look at me that I would stir any trouble, but I am a troublemaker. I'm very rebellious. I question things. I do a lot of havoc. I ask a lot of questions, especially from my family or anyone who is willing to engage. The road, I would want to go back to, I am born of Amawushe, my clan, we are from Amabaca. I would want to go back to them and ask them questions and try and understand some things that they did that I don't agree with. I would very much love to do that.
What would be the first question you would ask them?
Why do you think you were born into this world? What was your purpose as a clan? Yeah, why? What do you think was your purpose of existing? Why did you come here to this world? I would want to hear that from them. That would be my first question.
Excellent question. Excellent. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Igama lami Siphokazi Jonas. I am learning to stay open. And my road with faith is overgrown, so it would probably lead to a machete. Yeah.
And how would you define yourself? How would you introduce yourself? Who are you?
No, because who I am is not what I do, right? So, Dingmamdagwende. Dingmamdagwende. And my favorite of my clan names is Uchebelendle, which is to be fat or flourish in the wild or the wilderness.
I feel like also it signals something about abundance and self-sufficiency, softness and tenderness, being here and presence, taking up space softly. I love that. To give you a little taste of, I suppose, what I'm navigating, and if I were to ask myself my own question, like if my journey was a road, where would it be leading to? All of the women in my family are Jehovah's Witnesses. I come from a very strict and rigid understanding of the world, but I also grew up in a home of such contradictions. My father is Catholic, my mother is a Jehovah's Witness, but I was always deeply encouraged to read. And as a child with hyperlexia, I was very avid and very hungry to read. And I was never really restricted on my appetite for things. So my curiosity led me outside of the faith. And I've been meandering in the forest, in the wilderness, under the moon, towards the ocean, under rivers, in the water, in the desert, wherever my feet lead me. And my unruly heart leads me. So yeah, I think some of the best ways to really delve into any book is to hear it. And it's such a gorgeous gift to have our authors here. So I think I'd ask them to read a little bit. So Pontsho, this incredible book, Power and Faith, How Evangelical Churches Are Quietly Shaping Our Democracy. This book is both a personal, incredibly personal charting out of indoctrination, out of, I hate the word brainwashing, because I feel like it doesn't get at the texture of agency, both in the structures and institutions that we find ourselves in, and also the agency of the people worshipping, of the people that go and look for truth. So I'd love for you to read from your introduction.
Alrighty.
Also with the banging first sentence.
Yes. So every chapter of my book begins with a Bible verse that subverts the Bible verse. So I'll read the Bible verse first. I'm reading Joel 2, verses 28 to 32. Let the saints say amen.
Amen.
And afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days. I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there will be deliverance. And as the Lord has said, even among the survivors whom the Lord calls. What if I told you that I used to belong to a religious cult? My declaration is likely to surprise you, even leave you a little confused. At most, it might pique your interest, and you may ask for more details. I'll tell you that it was one of those evangelical churches, and then leave you to fill in the gaps for yourself, because there are endless possibilities of what an evangelical church that is cult-like looks like in South Africa. Did I eat grass, or maybe a snake? Was I sprayed with doom? Did my spiritual father resurrect a man from a coffin, shouting praises to the Lord? Did I squander all my retirement money honoring a man I call Papa or Daddy? Or idle away hours in long queues in the sun in the hope of touching the hem of the apostle's garment? Did my man of God deliver me from the clutches of evil by commanding me to strip naked or demand I lie on the ground so he could drive over me? No, none of these happened to me. My Christian cult is not nearly as sensational. It has not made the headlines in the ways other evangelical churches may have. And I would have quit my job to serve the Lord full time, or I could have attended church every day. That's how much it meant to me.
Thank you so much for that. I think the first that I want to ask you is your relationship with the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had a little chat about it just now.
Yeah.
But what is behind your decision to work with Christian text while critiquing evangelical Christianity in such a structural but also a deeply individual way?
You know, an author in yesterday's panel said that her favorite book is a Bible because it's so dramatic. And I was like, I hear you, sister, because, wow. I learned how to read through the Bible. I learned how to write through the Bible. And the Bible has been so instrumental in the formations. Like, for instance, as a person who went to a Model C school, how I learned how to speak Setswana, my home language, is through comparing the Setswana Bible and the English Bible that I was given at the Catholic school I went to. So it's very integral in my writing. But I also felt that I needed to subvert the journey that I've been through by taking the same verses and placing them in places that may seem contradictory, but serve the purpose of showing that a Bible verse can mean anything in the hands or in the minds or in the mouths of the believer. And it is also to subtly talk about the fact that, which I don't really mention explicitly in my book, but is a theme that is there, that the Bible in itself is not the danger. The danger is the way it ends up and in whose hand it ends up. So using those Bible verses at the beginning of every chapter, I think one of the longest things that happened is choosing which Bible verse to go with which section, because of the importance they carry in explaining the narratives of each chapter. So I have a very good relationship with the Bible. I still read the Bible, even though I don't necessarily subscribe to Christianity anymore. But I think it's an important literary text that I hold dear, and it shapes so much of our world that I can't critique something I do not intimately know.
Mm-hmm. One really beautiful thing in the same introduction, you say, because the church that you left, you call the family here, which I think is such a poignant name that you choose for a deeply authoritarian, nuclear, heterosexist organization, because so many times, and this is something that you say so much in the introduction, where we learn power, where we learn structure, where we learn domination for the very first time. So many of us are in our families. And one of the most beautiful things that you say here is, I left my family for the family. That you left your nuclear sort of space where you learn these things, but you swapped one authoritarian family for another. So yeah, I want to talk a lot more about this, but I also want to get onto the others. The through line, I think, from Hugh to Thobeka is family. The passage that I really, really want you to read from is a very difficult moment inside of your family, in which the tension between truth and power come out most intimately. And I love that you introduced yourself as a mother, because I think we get to see the crisis of motherhood in this particular moment. So please read.
Thank you. It's titled A Disturbing Phone Call. Starts with a quote: "The most important thing I know and do is that I am my kid's mom." Laura, okay, it's difficult to pronounce. So on Monday morning, on her way back from gym, Thobeka received a call from one of her sisters-in-law, the older one. "Hello, I don't usually call you, but I had to." There's a brief silence while Thobeka was thinking, oh, what now? It's Monday morning and she was on her way back from gym. "Why are you calling me then?" she asked the woman on the other end of the line. The statement was packed with so many layers. Thobeka's mind was racing. "Well, why don't you call?" "Not me. Don't call me, but your brother's child. Why don't you check up on him? Call him on his birthday, that is, if you even know when he is celebrating. Or Christmas Day. Why? What could be one important than to call a child of your brother's child so dearly?" Or, oh, sorry guys, let me go back. What could be more important than to call a child your brother so dearly loved, and who even looks a lot like you? Now that you don't want, now what do you want from us? "Oh, but then this is you. Why do I expect a sudden change of heart? You hate me and my child. This may be your brother's child, but then Lendo Inombombo Omde gave birth to him. Does your son still live with you?" said the voice on the other side. Silence again, as she was thinking, what kind of a question is that? What does she think of me? Ah, well, I'm not surprised. "Yes," is all she said out loud. "Have you seen his Facebook timeline lately?" "No, he blocked me." "Is there something wrong?" The caller ignored her question and went on to say, "Please tell him that I don't like what he has posted on his timeline, and it will pain me for as long as I live." Thobeka was utterly shocked. Did her son insult anyone? No, surely not. "Just make sure you access his timeline," she was told. "Okay, I'll ask someone to do it for me, and I will also ask him what this is about. Please do, I'm hurt." Thobeka could not help but think how these people, the in-laws, always brought negativity into her life. She was exhausted and certain that she'd made the right decision by staying away from them. When her son came back from school that afternoon, she asked him about the Facebook post. Her boy said that he had not posted anything controversial on his timeline. And Thobeka guessed that maybe her son insulted one of his cousins. The following day, the woman called again, asking if Thobeka had access to her son's Facebook page. She said no, but she had spoken to the boy and assured her that his posts were not insulting to anyone. Her sister-in-law insisted that she try and access the Facebook account. Annoyed now, in fact fed up, Thobeka asked her friend Portia to take a look at the boy's Facebook account. She was completely unprepared to hear what he had shared on his Facebook. Her boy posted that he was gay. The reason why the aunt was upset was that her little boy was openly gay on social media. Shocked to the core, Thobeka confronted him. He admitted that he had always known that he was gay and tried very hard to fight it, but it had not been easy. He finally gave in. Trying hard not to cry, Thobeka asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Your mother. How can you tell the whole world and not tell me? You know I won't judge you." But there was more to her concern. Why are you declaring your love for some boy on social media while you are so young? Why did you kiss another boy and post distasteful pictures of yourself with him in bed? This is not acceptable. You are underage, and why do you pose with cigarettes and post your pictures online? It was all too much for her. She could not help herself. I find it very selfish. You don't tell me, your mother, about your sexuality, but you are comfortable to tell the whole world. You are so young, and I expect you to be busy with your schoolwork instead of declaring your undying love for some boy that is way older than you.
Thanks, Mama. I think we can stop there.
Okay.
We can stop there for a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you.
I really chose that conversation. Yeah, let's have a breath before that. Yeah, that was really hard.
Yeah.
I chose that moment because I think for me, when I encountered that moment, it felt incredibly honest for you. Firstly, with this device of you speaking about yourself as Thobeka, just out there, but not necessarily that these are the words, which I love as a literary device, but also how incredibly honest and difficult and hard it is to firstly recount that moment, but then to tell it again. Do you want to talk a little bit about the process of firstly recounting that moment as a parent and then recounting that moment as a writer?
Well, it was a shocking moment, and I say this from love. I was not said that my child is gay. I was said that he could not tell me. I thought that I had created space that was safe for him to be able to share with me everything. And I judged myself a lot, asking myself questions: what energy am I projecting? What am I saying? Or what am I doing that led to this? Because I believe that I am the only person that Lwetu should be telling these things. Understanding that he was a teenager, and teenagers then they don't want to speak to their parents. I was also once a teenager, and I didn't want to talk to my parents even Especially I grew up in the 80s, nobody wanted to talk to me. I thought I was just existing. Nobody was interested in what I had to say. So I always wanted our home to be a safe space, and wanted Lwetu to know that I am always there and I am not going to judge. What was painful for me was that he did not tell me, but told the whole world. And what his aunt said did not, I expected that. So the guilt of you judge yourself harshly when you are a single mom. You want what's best for your child. And when they show signs that they are not as close as you thought they were to you, it hurts you. It was painful.
You feel
I'm
the
even
pain
having
there.
a hot flash because I'm reliving it. That hurt me the most, that he told anyone else but me. And I was asking myself, how long has he known? And how long has he been trying to live his life, trying to please me, asking for toys, boy toys, balls, Spider-Man, all the toys, while he knew that he wanted a doll or something else, something pink and pretty, and could not come to me to ask for that.
I think the thing that is so painful is feeling the level of fear that, especially, I mean, from my perspective, I came out to my mother, so I'm on the other side of that. It was the first time I was able to kind of encounter and really think about how incredibly afraid you must have been in that moment, and that the layers of fear are so complex, that you were afraid for him, but you were also afraid for yourself. You'd been afraid about the way that you've been raising him. You're afraid of the world that you're letting him into. And I thought it was so beautifully put and so honestly rendered. So thank you so much for that. We'll talk a little bit more about it. Thank you for reading it. So guys, it's your turn. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you?
Sure.
Siphokazi has written an incredible book called Weeping Becomes a River. And it's strange to even call it a collection of poetry, because it's not just a collection of poetry. It is a memoir, but it also isn't. It's a work of great and grand imagination, but also it is so deeply grounded in the world. And as a poet, it's wonderful to encounter poetry that isn't afraid of pain. But doesn't glamorize it, but doesn't roll around in it like a bale of hay either, but is honest and transcendent and hopeful. I think every note inside of this remarkable collection, let's call it a collection, because but is so resonant and full of song. And I thought it would be wonderful just to hear you read a few of these poems. I have my list of favorites, but there's so many. Oh God. Oh God. I think the first one that I want to hear you actually read from, because I think it connects to what you were talking about, Pontsho, about literacy, Christianity, the history, what a fantastic scholar from the University of Johannesburg, Natasha Erlank, calls institutional thickness. Christianity's institutional thickness, so much so that Black people were required to learn how to read from the Bible, and only from the Bible, in mission schools. And obviously you're not just imparting literacy skills, that you're imparting a worldview, you're imparting a morality, you're also imparting very intensely Christianity as a tool of colonialism. And it's something that Leviticus for the African Mission gets at very beautifully. So, Siphokazi, if you could honor us with the first of a selection on page 22. Hey?
Yeah. I just want to say, this is the actual size of the book. But Maneo has this. Before the book was out, so if you like nervous, they like,
I have the nerdy version.
It's too big.
But also it's like big and fleshy for all of my notes, so thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Leviticus for the African Mission, verse 1 to 9. Ship the holy flame across the sea, and be not discouraged by the objecting native who imagines his beliefs adequate. This is the resistance of darkness to light. Rewrite his gods as sin and savage. Convince him of his need for salvation hitherto avoided for millennia. Initiate the sons of chiefs, not kings. Warn them against measuring themselves equal to monarchs whose interests have sponsored your mission. Daughters and common folks will be last to catch new fires. Spare not the rod of civilization. Present native child to school desk as if to an altar under the discipline of scripture and Shakespeare, until the smoke which embitters the nose sweetens in the lungs. Conclude his conversion with confession. Inculcate a willingness to bear rejection from his tribe and the empire as an ordinance of God. So mindful of heaven, he may consent to enter it through the back door. Heed the words of the prophets. Their offspring shall be born, mouths white with ash to confront the flame. When they do, deny ever setting them alight. Amen.
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 There are so many delicious things about this reappropriation of biblical text. I think, and yeah, actually I'm just going to go right into it. I absolutely love how dark it is because of the voice that you take up, which very much feels like a colonial voice, but also a prophetic voice, but also what poets call vox historia, the voice of history, which also feels like a booming, terrible, inevitable voice. There's inevitability, such inevitability inside of this, but also levels. So here you say, daughters and common folks will be last to catch new fires. That signals so much about how Christianity arrived in this country, that it didn't just arrive with God, but with gender. And with its arrival and codification of gender, very much a staunch separation of what girls can do and must do, and what girls are for, and what boys must do and what boys are for, which is something that you get on very intensely, Pontsho, of course, with the impact of evangelism on abortion centers, which is something that we're going to get at. Don't worry, I'm coming back. But I also want you to talk about spare not the rod of civilization, which brought us back into the first time I heard what spare the rod, spoil the child. That this English, very British, colonial thinking, but we get the specter of violence, that's corporal punishment, but also that very much the Bible arrived before the guns, that laid the land, laid the foundation for deep conquest. So tell me about, I think the question that I want to get at is, tell me about the weight of history and working with it as a poet.
Thank you for the softball question.
I told you, yeah.
These are things I think about in the shower all the time.
Let's go, yeah.
Oh, goodness. So what's interesting is this, I've encountered this in a number of ways, and I think the epitome of it was during my master's research, where my project was on Shakespeare education in South Africa and how it imagines and shapes the school child as a potential citizen, right? So thinking about the history of English education in South Africa, Shakespeare in particular, the framing of very English values as universal. So Shakespeare is the epitome of that, like these are these universal values that we all have and must hold, and very important for conquest. And I think in a lot of the research that I did, I encountered my own experience in just looking at exam papers over a couple of decades, reading these really old articles written by teachers in sort of the 60s, the 70s, looking at Saul Plaatje and his work with translating Shakespeare. So I think I didn't realize at the time that what I was looking for, even though it was through this research, and I had a very terrible experience with my master's actually, was my experience in, at school with studying Shakespeare. And I remember I like to make this example where in one of these journals you see even who the imagined child is when it comes to English education in South Africa, where you'd find in exam papers from probably like the 40s or 50s, there's, because of the division of education in South Africa, so probably a little bit later, that for the white child, you have these questions about Shakespeare. It's like, Othello, okay, maybe not so much Othello, but they didn't like that one.
Any other one. Anyone but the Moor.
Right. So that, and then in the Bantu education paper, it would be like, if your neighbor has 5 goats and one of them crosses into your field, can you write a letter to the headman? Like those kinds of things. And this is like the same grade. Right, so the way in which even that was established for what the social position would be and what role you eventually play in the world. So I've been working with history in that sense for a while, and I think that excavation for me is always interesting. It's always very personal, right? So I don't know what I can say about that. I mean, even when I was working on this book, I spent a lot of time. There are recordings of a storyteller, Inzomi storyteller, Mam Zenani Nositatu. Nongenile Zenani Mastatu. And she was recorded in 1975 by Harold Shoaib. So he sort of traveled throughout the country in Eastern Cape, KZN, and then recorded these tellings of Inzomi, Inganekwane, so for years. And I had her voice in my ear for weeks, endlessly, just listening to her tell Inzomi. There were English translations. I looked at them, I was like, I need to weird.
This is not.
Right. So as I think for me, then it's less about capturing a kind of like historical veracity or just like trying to find what is the truth, but rather where we are located. I think I said to a friend of mine, was just pointing out Castle of Good Hope, and there's a way in which history and the present are constantly in conflict in Cape Town.
Yes.
But it's visible, because I always think about here, we're in District 6, what it means for someone whose family was evicted, and then now to come into the city to work and then have to leave it. But there's a sense of belonging. So that's my relationship with history. It's like it's constantly in this, and more so within
its presentness. Yeah. Speaking about this weight of history on the past and also feeding into, we were taught gender inside of the Bible. Pontsho, we met and I suppose bonded in the newsroom in previous lives at the Maiden Guardian, but I knew you as this incredibly principled health journalist. Tell me a little bit about what you have learned about the relationships between public health and faith.
Yeah, I think the first is I left the family. The family is what I call the church for legal reasons in the book, is what I call the church I used to go to. You probably know it, but even if you don't, you know it because there's so many of them, right? So I left the family a few months before I joined the Mail and Guardian as a journalist, and I was a political journalist before that, and then I became a health journalist, like you said. And as I was navigating myself through the religious trauma that I didn't even know was religious trauma at the time, I started reporting on sexual reproductive health and rights in South Africa. So the decriminalization of sex work, abortion access. It was also around the same time Donald Trump became the president of the US. And so as I'm navigating through this very difficult 7 years and this deeply personal and hurtful time on a spiritual and personal level, it first started when I was at a decriminalization of sex work conference. And there were people from both sides, the sex worker, activists, and public health specialists that were talking about the importance of decriminalizing sex work in order for sex workers to actually have rights in South Africa. And on the other camp was mostly Christian, particularly evangelical, people who are against the decrim of sex work on the basis that it is prostitution and they conflated it with human trafficking, which is absolutely not true. And I heard myself in the anti-sex work decrim people because I was that person and I didn't know it, right, at the time. So I'm sitting here, I've read the studies, I've interviewed sex workers, I've interviewed the experts. I understand on an empirical level why decriminalization is a good thing in society. But here are these people using the words that I used to say, using the sentiments of the Bible that I used to believe in to say that it should not be done. And it took me back to when I actually, in the church, was involved in rescuing a woman who was genuinely trafficked. And the link there is that the evangelical movement is so embedded within the anti-rights movement, the anti-queer, the anti-women, the anti-gender, the anti-abortion movements, that I started hearing religious sentiment in all these anti-gender movements that are springing up. And I was just like, wait a minute. When I was in church and my friends were involved in the street ministry where they were delivering sex workers and sometimes trafficked people out of their line of work, what was the agenda there? When my church has abortion recovery or child loss home cell groups, specifically for women or people who were pregnant, what is that about? Mm-hmm. Is it about helping women who've miscarried or women who've lost their children? Or is it about imposing the pseudoscientific idea of abortion, post-abortion syndrome, which has been proven to be wrong? So I started to grapple with that, and I ended up going undercover in Pretoria at a crisis pregnancy center, which is a place that masquerades as a place where you could possibly get sexual reproductive health services, contraceptives, abortion, or whatever other. The breadth of sexual reproductive health is so broad. But they prey on people who find themselves unintentionally pregnant, and they try to manipulate and convince them to keep the pregnancies, even when they desire to terminate the pregnancy.
Using religious
texts. I mean, I was told when I was like, no, I pretended to be a 26-year-old pregnant woman. And when I said, I still want abortion after all the manipulation, they're like, what if you're carrying the next Nelson Mandela? I have the recording, literally. And so to see, and it operates within the University of Pretoria openly. And so to see the systemic ways in which religiosity, and particularly evangelical religiosity, and how they're getting money from the US, how they're being funded and trained by US evangelical right-wing organizations, blew me away. Mm-hmm. And even though I had left the church for separate reasons, I had to grapple with my complicity into the system unknowingly on this work. And that's where my health journalism and my religious trauma and my 7 years in an evangelical church started to just melt into one another.
The Venn diagram became a circle.
The Venn diagram became a circle and it freaked me out, and this book just poured out of me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for writing it. Because I think through charting your own, the scales falling from your mind and your eyes, it's just it almost feels like a pathway for a lot of people that are struggling with the same thing. Also because you just tell it like it is.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to have a journalist brain with such sticky things as well. I'm very, very conscious also because time is flying. And we only have an hour, and I could ask all of the things, but I know we have wonderful, curious minds in the room, and I want to leave enough time for questions and comments. So please, if you have questions, we'll get a mic to you, and we do not bite, we just nibble.
Wow. Oh, a few hands already.
We do, yeah. We have a hand in the back over there, and we have one here in the front.
And another one.
And another one with a really nice hat.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Very nice.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for a beautiful conversation. I think my interest is around church because I think the whole day today we've been hearing a lot more about church. But what I wanted to ask you guys is, I think most of the people in the room would fear losing their parents and would fear feeling like they are not part of a church because that's what we've been taught and that's what we've had to ingrain in our minds and in our daily life. What do you guys think church should be then, right? Like, how is church supposed to be in order for us to, and also how do we make our parents unlearn the church that they already live currently?
Fantastic. So I think it would be wonderful just to have all of the questions and then open it up to anybody who wants to respond. So the first question is about church. What if we're thinking about remaking the church, fine. What image are we remaking the church into? Let's hear the next one.
Thank you. Pontsho, I discovered your book about 6 months ago and devoured it over a weekend. I feel a lot of regret over the many years of my youth that were lost to the evangelical church. And I went through a quite spectacularly public on Facebook deconstruction process. And was very surprised at how many messages I received in private from friends over the years who had never said anything about having any doubts, but as soon as I expressed mine openly, they came to me in secret and said, "Thank you for asking these questions. Please don't stop." I'm sure you had a similar experience. My question in a long-winded way is to say, do you see any potential for a kind of a deconstruction community in South Africa? It's such a huge thing in America. There's so much to read and to watch and to listen to. Not all of it's great, but at least it gives you a space to think with others in a way from a distance. But I have really felt the lack of that here, and I think there are lots of people. I see some of us in the room. There are lots of questions being asked and not really much of a discourse. It seems to happen very much in private. It can feel very shameful and alone. So I just wanted to hear from you if you have any perspective on that.
Incredible. Thank you so much. I think we had the wonderful hat, and if we have any more questions, speak now or forever. Okay. There's one here and one there, and then we'll open it up.
Yeah. So I don't know if I have a question or a comment. I love I didn't grow up in a church, but I definitely grew up in a home where there was love. And I only discovered church in my 30s and 40s. And so I find, yes, that there should be a deconstruction of the church. But I also think if in the deconstruction, if we did have the Bible, which is an interesting book about humans, non-humans, and a lot more than what the evangelical churches say what church is about. And so if we really delved into that book honestly, I think the conversations that we'd be having here would be totally different, because we are in the time where we're about to see some showdowns. So if we're prepared as a humanity, we can deal with it honestly. And I think deconstruction is a good thing. Okay.
I think we have one there and then one there.
Hi everyone. So in the topic of deconstructing, I've been to so many talks this weekend, and it's all about decolonization, connecting with ancestors again, queerness and divine, everything, and it's been amazing. And for me, in so much of my social media space, that is what my social media is. It's about talking about queerness, talking about decolonizing. But then even when I bought like Pontsho's book, I wanted to post it, and I felt all of a sudden this anxiety, because I've got all these friends that are almost heading towards a radical side, watching them being radicalized. I've got all these friends who would tell me like, well, Bianca, transgender people are actually the devil, because in the Bible it says that the devil has no gender. And I felt so scared, because these were my friends. These were people I grew up with. These were my church friends. These were my family. It was everyone. So how do you guys navigate almost that fear of correcting your family members, correcting your friendships, because it is difficult. You think that anxiety is gone because you've left church or you've left that space, but it's still there. So how do you guys navigate that?
Thank you. Then the last one over there. How are we doing with keeping track of these? I know it's very overwhelming.
I've been writing them down.
Incredible. We love a journalist. Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, my love.
Oh, wow. This is wow. Anyway, Sis Thobeka, this question is specifically for you. I am a very young mother myself. I have a 2-year-old, and when I look at the world, I'm very worried. I'm quite concerned. And earlier today, we were in another session where a lady asked about being heterosexual and raising a queer child and so on. And I think here you've raised something interesting about your child telling the entire world before yourself. What does the aftermath of that look like then? What is the care that goes into ensuring that this child knows? Because, of course, the world is not going to allow them to be. No matter what you teach them, they won't allow them to be. So what is the insistence, the insistence for you as a parent that you are allowed to be and you will be? What does that look like? What does that look like in the home? And what does that look like as a parent, ensuring that your child will be, no matter what the world decides? Thank you.
Thank you for all of those beautiful questions. We'll go right into it.
Yeah, can I answer the first question and then I'm going to listen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to give you a very unhelpful answer. So I just want, because yes, it's really not going to help, but hopefully something in there. So I actually want to read 2 short poems, if that's all right, because I think, yes, within this particular context.
We ask, please, yes, please.
Yes. And then perhaps a little bit to you, but also me, in that anxiety. So, playlist. Track 1, update Bible. Okay, I'm not going to explain what it's about. Track 1, update Bible app. Track 2, sample desire. Beyonce's Church Girl on repeat. Track 3, listen to more gospel. Track 4, fortify stop nonsense. Church jargon discourages questions. Track 5, what is true to you does not feel safe. Track 6, church girl conditioned to value crucified bodies. Track 7, something awakens the ghost of twerking future in your waist. Track 8, doesn't know how to let go or love on herself. Track 9, you recovered from COVID, but your faith did not. Track 10. Track 10, without guilt. Track 11, unmute your whole body. And then, so with Wildfire, I think this question is sort of early. Your question of how church should be is like, it's only been a couple of thousand years. What do you mean? I don't think
it's very early.
This is why I say
we still have time.
Okay, this is why I say so. Wildfire. My sister is an arsonist. says fire is a language for healing and fills our house with smoke. We are fynbos cracked open by heat, waiting for conflict to cool at the dinner table, picking new seeds out of the ash. She questions the old ways of doing things, the pantomime of peace which families perform. There is always one born wildfire, sometimes fanned, sometimes smothered. So I think it's got to burn, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Very well done. And to lead onto that question, which I think also leads into the question about deconstruction, I think church should look like the people that are in it. And worship can be in the body, can be in communion, and can be anywhere you want it to be. And worship can be whatever you choose it to be. I like to call myself spiritually fluid and flexible.
Amen.
Because I tap into different spiritual modalities as a form of worship.
Amen.
And so, but the co-option of the Bible by bad faith actors is real. We cannot be naive about that, right? But there's also liberation theology, right? Franchikani and the African Faith Mission Church were at the helm of apartheid, anti-apartheid work. You know, Desmond Tutu, who I write about in the book as well, around how he almost really sabotaged us with the Rainbow Nation, but like,
TRC.
which is also biblical in its own way, right?
Yes.
But church is whatever you choose and whoever you choose to do it with. And around the deconstruction community, I completely understand. My deconstruction has taken 8 years. And for the longest time, I felt so lonely in doing it and didn't have the language for it until I discovered Professor Marlene Weinell's definition of religious trauma syndrome, which is like a PTSD-like syndrome, but from indoctrination. And I speak about it a lot and about recovering in the book, but also on my TikTok. And the comments are just like your inbox. It's like, oh my gosh, somebody's actually talking about that. And I think as our voices become stronger and as more of us talk about it, that's how we can find ourselves having these conversations. I said to Maneo at the beginning of the panel, I was like, so many young people, I didn't expect this, right? But it says something, it's a sign. It's a changing tide, that something is changing within our society, and it is us, the young people, I consider myself young, who are standing in the gap, right? And I use that metaphor, that biblical metaphor, very deliberately, that we're standing in the gap for our own generation and for our own generational deliverance from the shackles of evangelicalism and the shackles of every anti-gender Christian movement or Abrahamic faith movement that is happening. So let's keep talking about it. And just the lady in the fabulous hat around how amazing the Bible is. There are many lessons in the Bible, but we cannot again be naive on how it's been co-opted and how it's damaging our democracy, it's damaging the rights that we have, and it's damaging our inner beings, you know. The self-petulance that comes and the self-flocking that comes with the Bible is something that self-victimization and denial of self on the basis of the ideologies in which people have co-opted the Bible in are things that we need to call out. And that's what deconstruction, that is what recovering and navigating religious trauma are about. Do you remember your question, or would you like me to read it again?
Please.
Okay, I wrote down Thobeka's question. It is, what does the aftermath look like after your son's coming out?
Oh, the aftermath. There was a pity party that I hosted. But didn't have enough time to enjoy it because my child needed me. I quickly had to snap out of it because now there's this aunt who is like guns blazing, saying they cannot be associated with this. So I had to forget about my shock, about the thoughts that I have, the wishes. We dream for our kids. We want them to have certain things. We want them to get married. We want to have grandchildren. I wanted grandchildren so badly because Lwetu is the only child, and there is pressure coming from a family where his dad was the only son. So I had to keep this family tree growing. So a lot of my pity party stemmed from that, from the fact that I wanted to grow this family. My intention really from the very beginning I joined the family, I wanted to you help the family grow. So then that was stolen from me by now finding out that Lwetu is no longer interested in girls, so he is not going to produce. I will not have children. Those were my thoughts. But I quickly had to assure Lwetu that I am here, I love you, and to me, you are not your sexuality. You are my child. It does not matter who you love. I love you, and you are safe with me. And I don't know about this journey. This is new. There are things that I need to unlearn, but we will learn together. I will read up. I will try. We will engage more and talk more about this. And please feel free to tell me when I am making you uncomfortable or projecting any kind of energy that is making you feel uncomfortable around me. Remember, inside, I still wanted my boy. I still wanted to go to soccer matches and all of that. I'm also grateful that Lwetu came out at 16. There was, now he was old enough for me to be able to engage and talk and tell him when I don't know that I don't know, but let's journey together. I am your mom. We got this. And eventually the journey changed. Lwetu then again told me that actually I am trapped in a wrong body. I am transgender. So that was also another shock. And she tried to transition socially and would now be more feminine and wear makeup and dresses and heels and weaves and braids. And so it was, I had to get over myself and forget. I think the journey or the gift of being a mom is to learn to be selfless sometimes and just embrace your children as they are for who they are. It has not been an easy journey because Lwetu suffers from depression and anxiety. So sometimes even when I show love, she wouldn't see it because she sometimes would build walls around her, and I would not be able to get in. But we are slowly getting there. I am now able to address Lwetu as she, which was difficult. I can now look at Lwetu and be proud and say, yo, you look good in that dress. I could not at first. I remember when I first saw her wearing a dress, we went to Camps Bay for dinner, and I got there first, and then she came afterwards and she was wearing a dress. Saw her for the first time. I could not look at her. The amount of white wine I drank there, okay, trying to loosen up because I don't want her to feel a type of way or unloved or unwelcome. So it has been a journey, not an easy one. I cannot sit here and lie and say this has been an easy journey. I've cried, I've prayed, I've had to go to therapy, I've had to speak to friends who were willing to listen. I've had to, I got sick because it's a lonely journey. You don't want to talk about this with your friends sometimes because of this need to protect your child. You are afraid they will say something offensive, and I don't want to hear that. All I know is that I love my child and I want to be here for her now.
Yeah.
I think it's good for us to take a giant breath as a maybe another one. Maybe just one. I want to acknowledge how difficult and how tender, how sensitive and how vulnerable, how messy and how human a journey of becoming and unbecoming is, whether it is our own, whether we are witnesses, which is an interesting word for me. Amen. I think a final word, and then I'll thank my incredible panel and my incredible audience. So much about the Bible from the faith-based space that I come from was all about the end of the world. All about preparing for the end of the world. All about preparing oneself for paradise. Pamphlets. Enjoy life forever. It's the promise, right? But what I realized in leaving, that what I was missing out on was the world, was the people in front of me, was the world inside of me, and the world between us. And I want to thank everyone in this world that we made for ourselves and each other, for holding yourselves with tenderness and gentleness, for holding us with tenderness and gentleness, and for holding each other. So thank you, and I hope that the conversations grow and bloom and blossom, and I hope that we're able to also make connections and find communities in the spaces where we can't find communities, we make them. Yes. So, and I know that we can. So, thank you so much.